You ever use any new digital tools like scan the room or build a LiDAR rendering or?
Not yet. It's been one of those things where it's on the list, right? And the LiDAR is definitely going to be a great tool when I use it, because when you do your floor plans, you lay it out. But with this, you can really just pick your angles and actually do it from a first person perspective. And then, dialing in your lenses and your camera moves. It's all pre-production anyway. So it's when you can use the actual environment, that would be great.
It's time for Respect the Process, a short chat about commercial filmmaking. Here's your host, director Jordan Brady.
Oh, wonderful, Helen, wonderful. It is the 24th of April, 2025. My guest is director Scott McCullough, and you're going to learn a lot from this conversation, whether you're a new filmmaker to commercials or you're seasoned and you want to make a pivot. Here's what I think you're going to learn. You're going to learn the power of networking. You will learn how to be adaptable, and that the creative process is worth respecting and being open to those happy accidents we all love on set. That's more important than trying to control every single moment. Scott's journey is not a straight line. It's kind of a weird path. He went from directing music videos for Prince to shooting for NASCAR, and then he has this whole line of truck commercials. Helen, I saw his montage. I'm normally not a fan of the montage, Helen, but I saw Scott's montage of truck commercials. It blew me away. And that naturally led into some tractor work, because if you can shoot a truck, you can shoot a tractor. Tractors are much slower. I am just back from just a wonderful road trip. I had a gig up in Seattle, and with the wonderful Sherry Matthews agency. I've done a lot of work with them, with my friends Rich, Terry, who's been on the show, Matt Mowat, who gave me one of my first commercials, but he doesn't listen to the podcast. He was actually on with Rich. And we were shooting in Seattle, so I said, you know what, I'm going to drive, because I got time. It's been slow. I don't know about you. And I'm going to take Breezy, my little camper, and I'm going to camp along the way. My daughter, Gabby, had moved back. Like a couple days before the trip, I go, Gabby, why don't you go on the road trip with me? She had just moved back from New York, and she goes, I'll think about it. And then a little bit later, I go, you think about it? She goes, yeah, I'm going. And by golly, we pulled out of here with the trailer. We camped in Oregon at a KOA campground. We lit a fire. We had s'mores. There were cows. We got a pizza delivered. And we barrel on through to Seattle. My son, Ben Brady, flies in, shoots the spot with me. He flies out. Then my lovely wife comes in after the shoot. We drive back, and we go through the redwood trees, the redwood forest of California. I don't know if it's a forest, Helen, or a park, but it is. I mean, these trees are gymongous. It's breathtaking. And so I feel like I'm rejuvenated just by being in nature. I drove over the weekend, so that was worth not flying. And it took a weekend to get home. So here I am, back in the saddle. Now, I did drink Magic Mind on the road trip just to keep me focused. And, I don't want to fall asleep at the wheel, obviously. But I did a kicker on set in the afternoon because I love the flow state. Now, you can Google what's in it. It's got the ceremonial grade matcha, and it's got the ashwagandha for your mind, and all these things. And they just came out with a time-released caffeine Magic Mind called Magic Mind Max. And I think if you use the code Brady40, you will save on that. I have not tried the Max yet. It's not supposed to be jittery caffeine. But I also did the Magic Mind on the road trip. Check it out. DM me if you have any questions about it. The Joshua Tree Retreat, we have 9 spots out of the 15. It is September 25th through the morning of that Sunday. I think it's the 20th. I should know, shouldn't I, Helen? It's all inclusive. You get there, your meals and drinks and snacks are taken care of. Your trip into the national park. We have a fire circle on Saturday. I will be taking Breezy, just because it hauls shit, right? And I believe we're going to have some people that were there last year return because there's a hefty discount if you've done boot camp or if you've been to the retreat. That's all I got. I got to tell you, I really appreciate the incredible story of Scott McCullough, and I think you're going to love it, listeners. Okay, Helen, cue up the tape.
I've been watching you and following your illustrious career for a while, and I'm like,
Oh, really? Thank you.
Why hasn't he ever been on this podcast? And then you put a truck montage. Like you've done every testosterone-fueled pickup truck made in America and probably elsewhere. And I saw it on LinkedIn, and I think that's when I reached out. I'm like, oh my God, this is a great truck reel.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you got to come on the show.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's a weird transition going from Prince to doing NASCAR. But it wasn't quite
It
that.
makes sense. I get it.
Yeah, right.
I'm kidding.
Helmet here and all. But
wait, before you go to NASCAR,
yeah,
I got a couple Prince questions. I met Prince in Minneapolis. Okay. It's its own episode of Respect the Process. If you Google it, it was at the Uptown Theater.
Okay,
where we were having a concert for a movie that we premiered in Minneapolis, and we shot around Minneapolis. We shot at Lee's Liquor Lounge. We shot at a local ice rink. We went to the country station. Long story, and huge fan. Like I saw him in either 81 or 82, Dirty Mind, Controversy tours. Like I'm a little older than you, so I was into him. Like there wasn't even that much purple. It was more lingerie and lace.
Well, I remember. Yeah, I feel the same way because I was in high school at the time Purple Rain came out, but I was a fan from the albums before, and it was just surreal, when you would see him out, because at the time I think the drinking age was still 18 or 19. So when I became drinking age, I would go to the some of these nightclubs, and you would see Prince show up, or you'd hear that he would be there, and he would just be there's this weird enigma that's just sort of sitting in the corner sipping on wine or whatever he was doing. And it's like three bodyguards. I'm like, that's just weird, and then when you see him in concert, it's like, a whole different world. So I think I saw every concert, up until the point of, where it's like I'm on to other things. But yeah, I look at when I see Prince, it's like a whole different
I bet.
vibe,
Well, my question was, you can rattle some off, and I'll put them in the show notes, but some of the music videos that you mentioned, Diamonds and Pearls and Sign of the Times, and that whole era of videos.
What? Yeah.
But I've heard stories like Kevin Smith tells a story of a whole documentary that never saw the light of day. And Afshin Shahidi is a cinematographer and director that traveled around as a photographer, maybe in the era you were in, but he was on this show, and I'm friendly with him, and he was saying, yeah, some stuff we would shoot, and then it was just the music video would never come out, or the song is in the vault. Like we've all heard now about the songs in the vault. So were you just like sometimes on call to shoot?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it went. I was doing, well, eventually I had a reel put together from all these music videos. And, I was working nonstop with being a crew member. So I was like doing PA work. I was, gripping. And so eventually I ran into a producer that I showed some work to. And ironically, he was working with Prince on something. So I said, okay, I'm in whenever you need me. So I literally got a page saying, are you available to shoot tomorrow? And I called him back, when you used to get pages, right? So I called him back. I said, can you get out to Paisley? But I've already been, at the time when I started working with him, I worked on Graffiti Bridge as a casting coordinator. So I got that gig.
The movie Graffiti Bridge.
Correct. And I was, working as coordinator, like on set, dealing with all the extras and their issues. And they all
you've
had
been
them.
vetted at this point. You're part of the tribe. You're a member of the...
I don't know. I still felt like I was outside. I was like, I just come in and work with the extras. I got paid as an extra. So I was like, coordinating and making sure everyone got their pay, and that they wouldn't just throw in $100 and scribble it out and put in $1,000, because it's like they did that. They tried to get more money on their vouchers. So they needed somebody there to kind of, police that, and so then I was, I guess I was around, and, familiar faces kind of helped. And so then when I got the call to shoot, I had enough confidence of knowing what to do. And I was always my own DP and always my own camera man. So I was like, I could pick up a camera, load it, and shoot it. And, understanding what lighting was, because I put myself into those situations where I had to, punt. And I was always studying the greats, Fincher and Michael Bay and all those, Ridley Scott, all the people that were doing the great visual work, including Joe Pitka. A lot of these, commercial director DPs that start from the film world. I was like, this is a chance to do something. But that night, that the whole day of shooting Diamonds and Pearls rehearsal at the big studio, I didn't have any crew. So I would load my own camera.
Wow.
I think my light meter wasn't working. The Nagra, which was recording the audio, wasn't working. So they had to resync all that stuff up. I thought for sure I was my one time in and out, and I was never going to work again. So, but yeah, so it was, I guess you could say, I was vetted, but I was also like, it wasn't that weird phase of starstruck, because I've been around and I knew what I needed to do was work and try to, please the man.
That's a great story. And then now you, if you will, take us from Diamonds and Pearls to NASCAR and motor oil.
Yeah, right. Well, with Prince, I worked 3 years. I did a lot of camera operating for other directors and other DPs, but I also was able to direct other projects. Like for Carmen Electra, I worked with Prince on doing other things. So it was an interesting time to learn that stuff. And then from there, I realized you either quit or you get fired. So I didn't want to get fired. So I moved on to doing commercials. So I hooked in with a production company called James Productions, which is one of the biggest in town in Minneapolis.
Still there to this day?
No. They purchased a athletic center, a gymnasium. It's called Energy Park Studios. And they had tennis courts with the rubber flooring. So it was great for sound. But, at the time, at the late 90s, there wasn't a lot of work in Minneapolis. A lot of it went out of town. So when the big agencies got the big accounts, they would go to LA.
LA, baby.
Right. So a lot of that stuff just sort of fizzled out, and a lot of production companies went under, including James Productions. So I during the transition from 98, 99, I knew I was going to move out to LA. So while I was doing that, I was trying to find other production companies I could work with, where I could actually use the Prince stuff and the commercials I've built up, and maybe not in Minneapolis, but in the Southeast. So I hooked in with a production company that had the NASCAR sports marketing connection. So I wrote a treatment.
Before you get to the treatment phase, help the listener who's a filmmaker that's trying to branch out and break into new markets. How are you doing that? You've got the Prince music videos. It's a great calling card. And whether it was email back then, probably wasn't. Probably you're sending a VHS or a 3/4-inch tape or maybe a new DVD in the mail. But
DVDs were not there, yeah.
Okay, so how are you approaching these companies? How are you finding them, and what are you saying?
Well, there's, it was tape at the time. So, you had a reel and you cut the reel together piece by piece and try to keep it under 5 minutes.
A montage for a director DP.
Correct. Yeah. Montages, or eventually I had commercials. So I would have, a couple commercials, some music videos. My first gig was, I think, Musicland. So that was a perfect segue from Prince and music videos to do Musicland, Sam Goody. And then I did Target. I helped one of the agencies land the account because they said, look, we have $25,000 for this commercial. We want to get Target. So can you help us do this commercial?
Target based in Minneapolis, by the way.
Correct. Yes.
And they have agencies of record, but they also do a lot of in-house stuff.
Now they do probably a lot more. Things have been more hybrid. But at the time, it was Peterson Hooks. And that was the agency that was trying to get the account, or they were working on that. And I think they may have had some print work with them or some radio ads. But we did this I think it's called Single Step. It was a one show winner, which was great. It was like one of my first commercials. So I did 5 different film stocks, including 8mm. We did this Muybridge rendition of exercise and technology and the start of filmmaking and how motion worked with athletics and how exercise was part of it. And single step starts with a single step and then it goes. So that spot won a bunch of awards, won them the account. And so I did a few more commercials with them. But it was like, getting back to your question, you start having commercials built up. I was with a production company that supported me and helped me through. And it was a great time. It was like, I missed that production company camaraderie and working with a team. You had an in-house reps. You had executive producers that worked with you. You have
they invested in your career.
Exactly. And so my responsibility was to work as hard as I possibly could and do as well as I could and, keep going. So yeah, you had to put together reels and send them out by FedEx or whatever. And it was either 3/4 inch or 1/2 inch, depending on where it goes. Ad agencies always used 3/4 inch pneumatic tapes.
Yeah.
So that was an expense, but now there's other expenses, of course. So it
was the workhorse of the industry, the 3/4 inch tape.
Yeah. And that was how I sent my reel out to find new work in other territories.
What was your letter, your cover letter with the reel? Hi, I'm Scott. Or?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, it was sent a reel with the resume and credit list and, let's talk. And so you get on the phone and talk about things and you would, land the representation or you didn't. It was, you're up against some big people. And when you're out there, pushing yourself, it's you get the opportunities where you can take them because it is competitive and it's highly, subjective. So if you, like you just mentioned, truck montage. Well, why a truck montage? Well, because, agencies want to see their spot on their reel. They're as close as you possibly can get. I may not have worked with Dodge yet. I may not have worked with some other big truck companies, but if I can get close to what they're looking for, and you'll never know that because they'll never tell you, but
yeah,
you kind of have to, you got a finite amount of time that you get. They won't even look at the whole reel.
No, not at all. We've talked about
seconds.
that how many seconds?
Nowadays I work with Simeon and there's other online platforms where you can put your reel and customize reels.
I'm a Simeon customer and it shows you the data. You can tell what spot had 25%, a 30-second spot that someone watched 25% of. I'm not good at math, Scott, but it's not a lot of time. They get it. And it's even made me choose the thumbnail with a Mr. Beastian type eye. I've been saying this a lot on the podcast here that I used to be fearful. I would want to reveal the joke. Now I'm putting the guy with the ice cream in his beard as the thumbnail just to intrigue people. And those tend to get more views. But back when you're sending a 3/4, I'm imagining you're opening with Prince twirling and doing the splits in the first 5 seconds.
Well, and nowadays, in fact, there's a reel that went out because it becomes more of a novelty because there's Prince fans everywhere. So, but it doesn't lead off the reel because you still need to sell. You need to sell the couch. You need to get in the door where you need to. So thumbnails are crucial for getting their attention. And when you look at the analytics and you see, times I'll send a reel out based on a wear spot posting And Wherespot is like one of these online sort of chat rooms that
The Facebook page, Facebook group that turned into more of a jobs posting site now.
Yeah. So you get like, we're looking for a director for X, Y, and Z, and send us a reel. So you'd send a reel and, they'll open it, but you look at the analytics and you realize they didn't even look at the first spot longer than 10 seconds. And all the other spots are 0 views.
Yeah.
So you realize you're already behind the 8 ball. You're already like literally not, benefiting from this instant access to thousands of directors. So that first few seconds is tough, and it's been tough for everyone, especially with the strikes and
it's the
pandemic.
Worst.
Yeah. So it's everything's a battle, and it's like you have to put your first things first. And now reels for me are going out 3 or 4, and that's it.
3 or 4 spots.
Yeah.
Oh, that's smart. I would say I'm a 6 to 8 person. Maybe that's too much, but I'm trying to play the odds that thumbnail will get them to something, right?
Yeah. Well, we all have websites, so
Yeah.
if they want to dig further, they can. And
I think they do. Like, I've been on calls where an agency creative will go, I really like that thing you did, and that wasn't on the reel. And that's happened enough times, Scott, where I think the good creatives invested in their own project, or they're seeing your work, and then they're going to dive a little deeper. They're going to check out your Instagram. They're going to go to your Vimeo. It probably goes reel, website, Vimeo.
It's not just the reel, it's your personality. Can you work with a bunch of people?
Yeah, the vibe.
And control the shoot, but with a way that they want a director. They want somebody to give it voice and a direction and keep on track and understand the pitfalls that come on any shoot, and have a plan and have a backup plan, and how you deal with people, your actual personality. Nobody likes a screamer. Yeah.
How did that first truck job come with no trucks on your reel?
Let me see. Well, it started with the NASCAR work, and it's kind of one step at a time. So I wrote a treatment for NASCAR Winston Cup, RJ Reynolds, that won the account we shot 16 millimeter. It was a short film that they would play. They would play this in front of all the racetracks the following year, so that they would get they would put up this little theater in the parking lot and get people psyched up. And it was part of RJ Reynolds, so they would have these giveaways, hats, cigarettes, whatever.
Yeah, sure. RJ Reynolds.
And right.
Is this in North Carolina? In Charlotte?
Yeah, well, that's where they're based. They're based in Raleigh, I think. But we went. I think that first bit of work was 6 different racetracks. We went to like Atlanta. We went to Dover. We went to obviously Charlotte. Other racetracks that we just kind of have to go where the races are. And so we did those, and I had race cars on my reel, and it was a 8-minute film that was great. Cut out the cigarettes, and now you've got maybe a commercial. So
wow, that's a lot of cigarettes.
Well,
to go from 8 minutes down to 30 seconds, you had 7 minutes plus of cigarettes.
Well, no, actually, it was kind of the other way. It really wasn't heavy. It was not heavy-handed in the smoking or the cigarettes. It's just they needed some branding, and it was. It gets a little, we talked about this. We didn't want to be too on the head with, smoke. It's the Winston Cup. So you got the branding on the cars. So we created these sort of little stories within this film. And then that was very successful. So the following year we shot 70 millimeter. So that was a big jump from 16 to 70 millimeter.
Yeah. What was the reasoning other than there was a Paul Newman race car movie with Tom Cruise that came out or something? Like, what made people go 70 millimeter film?
Well, it was literally the executive producer held up a sheet and said, okay, see this corner here? That's your 16 millimeter. Why don't we make this the entire canvas? And that sold the RJ Reynolds people to say, let's make this a very immersive project. And then so they went and took another step, and they built a 200-seat theater in 3 separate semi-trucks. projected in 70 millimeter film. And not only that, but they did 4D. So they had built custom seats that would spray
Shake
with
and
water.
shimmy. Oh, yeah, spray with water.
And then fog and, flashing with strobes. And so they did an immersive thing, which I never was invited to, of course. You do all this work. And I was like, I didn't even get a poster. I'm like, can I get a poster? I didn't even get a finished copy of the film. I just got my VHS rough cuts, and that's pretty much it. And I've been reaching out to RJ Reynolds. So if any of your listeners... For years, trying to get, give me a digibeta so I can actually encode it. I'll send it back. I'll pay for all expenses, but I can't even get that.
Helen, this was track down RJ Jr.
Yeah.
For Scott. Can you do that? Yeah. Helen's on the case. We'll get you that. We're going to track that down. You do the race car. You do this epic Nolan-like 70 millimeter thing. Then you're off to doing something else, and you don't see it, and you maybe got a hat out of the whole thing. And then someone goes, I bet Scott could do trucks.
Yeah. Well, we did after the NASCAR thing. I started doing Ford NASCAR. So there was a couple commercials I did with Ford for the NASCAR division. So Ford
they race trucks?
They didn't for NASCAR.
I know, I'm kidding.
Yeah. I'll get you. I think they do. I think they do the truck series.
That would be hilarious.
I did a pitch for truck series, but I never got the gig. So, but yeah, so I started working in vehicles that didn't have decals. And so the creative team that I worked on with the NASCAR for Ford had the spot that was for Ford Plow, which was basically the Ford truck towing a Chevy and a Dodge and creating the furrows for the farmer to plant the seeds, because you reap what you sow. So it was just a highbrow concept of the truck is so powerful it can pull the competition through dirt and create the places you can plant seeds. So that was my first truck spot, and then I started doing other things, towing and contractors.
Wait, let me double click on this plow spot. Is there an affidavit involved? Or is it movie magic?
Movie magic. Yeah.
Okay.
It was.
There's a disclaimer in a 2-point font that says actual trucks do not plow land.
That's true. Yes. And we did, when you come across a spot where it's like, how do you do this? So you have to create a custom tow rig to separate the two vehicles behind the Ford, because I want to do it all in camera as much as possible. Yeah. So we had a prop company that built a towing rig that would tow those vehicles actual and lock the wheels. And so before we shot, we had to break up. We're California, dirt and whatever is all rock hard. So we did have to break up some of the dirt in order to make this work, or else we have to create channels.
Yeah, trenches.
Exactly. So it was a bit of a prep. What are we going to run into if it rains the night before? If it's hard pack, when you get to a shoot, you got to know what your situation is. So there's a bit of prep in that. And so we had done some of that work and finding out what it's going to take to pull these vehicles through the dirt.
Little engineer.
Yeah. And so we had some visual effects, just one shot up high, big crane, where we had some, to deliver the story. And, it was movie magic, but it was also, mounted cameras. We did trucks running through dirt, all that fun stuff.
Based in a probable, although highly likely improbable, but possible reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. It's a concept, and it, that also was, part of, I think they just won a Detroit Free Press best truck on the market. So they wanted to take advantage of that. And they just said, let's do this. And it's, it was a bidding process. So you're up against other big directors, and I got it, which is great.
That's wonderful. I did this Dodge campaign with a handful of different Dodges, and the SUV pulled a boat, and it was all in a dealership. So it was like the side of the dealership, and it's more of an SUV, pulls the boat and then the boat is pulling water skiers in a pyramid of 5, 5, 3, 2, 1. And
Inside.
no, outside on the side of a dealership, like going with the dealership, like where you'd go by the service bay.
Yeah.
So we laid down a ton of mud because it was splashing mud and the tires were kicking up mud. And that was, okay, that's legit. But there's mud outside the dealership. Then the boat with the towing power and the VO, that was funny. And then the bonus was these, and they were dressed like attractive females with helmets, scarves, almost like a Penelope pit stop in black and checkered, and they're waving like a water ski show from olden times. And I ended up using mannequins and then pulled blue screen for, I think, 3, 2, 1 girls with close-ups. And we did some angles where we could in post put the faces in a waving arm on a mannequin, and it was so quick. Like once you got to the wide shot, you cut to this.
Yeah.
You know, and for the listener, I'm using my fingers to say the front shot. And it all worked dandily. But I remember there was someone from the agency saying, "You think it's too risky just to pull the skiers?" And it wasn't a rope. You know, the rope, it looked like a rope. It was really a hard wire. Sure. But I was like, I don't even think we could pull. Maybe you could pull 1 or 2 through the mud on a ski.
You know, it's different when you're on water, right?
Yeah.
So,
no, the mud was sloppy. I'm like, okay, if we put like wheels, you know, custom skis with wheels underneath, but then there's a trough, and I go, but I just think you're still going to have to build something in post.
Yeah. And the safety measures that would have to go in place, because any, say the truck or some sort of jolt. I mean, there's some give and take in water. There's stretch in the cable or the tow line. So when you're on water, it's not quite hard and fast up to speed. It's like, okay, you get the give of the water eases you in. So that's where the athleticism of the stackable water skiers.
Yeah. These were not athletically inclined young people. And I think you and I have talked about the possibility of doing it like that in camera more than I entertain the idea. I mean, I don't ever fault anyone for asking these questions. I remember a couple years ago, we shot the lovely Property Brothers, right? The Scott brothers from the home improvement shows on a roof for a solar company. And it was like a rooftop talk show.
Yeah.
And someone said, maybe we should just put them on a real roof. And I was like, yeah, I mean, if it weren't SAG and OSHA and 2 famous brothers who aren't going to climb up a ladder and a cherry picker to lift them up and down and a crew that's 30 feet in the air, if it weren't for all those reasons, I would say yes.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And just the logistics. Yeah. And just the logistics of getting up and down, and the roof, and where you're going to go. You're spending more money on a location, and then the insurance that goes with it.
And where do you park the trucks in the neighborhood? How do you scout a drone? It was crazy. We did it on a stage, and it turned out wonderfully. And by the way, they were delightful.
Great.
So I've got, when I look to the side here, I've got a second computer with your website. I have a couple questions.
And I apologize. I don't know why I look like a music video myself. I do have a high-end connection, so I'm blurring.
It could be the boat. It could be my boat. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Kubota. We are Kubota brand film.
Yeah.
And tell me about this. It's a 2-minute piece. It looks like a real guy. It's beautifully shot. You shot it with your own eye.
Thank you.
And it's these. When was this made?
I think we did that late 2016, 17, around that time.
Okay, so it's going back
fairly recent. Yeah, it's fairly. It's one. I didn't get the account. I pitched for it the year before. I didn't get it, but they remembered my pitch. So when the new creative came up the following year, I was brought in as a single source, which was great.
Oh, that's the best. Single source. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was great. So I knew the agency producer who served as a production producer as well, kind of double, duties, because he had to deal with the agency, but he also was producing the spot. John Brooks, he's great. He's an old school, did a lot of Kawasaki, did a lot of car work. And I've become really good friends with him. But we've done some work with Lucas Oil, some smaller projects, and that was a California-based oil company. So we knew each other from over the years and just spitballing creative ideas, and we're wanting to work together. And so this Kubota thing was a 3-day shoot. And we had to do 6 different locations on those 3 days.
And those are all real people.
Yes, real people that we went to. I think that one was in Kansas City, or, in that area. So not in Kansas City, but in the farms around there. So we found a local farm that was able to work with us and do a couple of these things. And we found another farm that like a hobby farm that had like also next to it, like a place where we could do the planting. And then we also had a horse farm next to, or a reasonable drive to the grass area. So we did 4 commercials, I think, out of those things. And so we had to pick and choose and cherry pick our sunrises or sunsets, and we're still limited to like 10 or 12 hour days. We had 2 thunderstorms on those shoots. We averaged about, I think, if each spot had anywhere from 18 to 22 scenes. So we doing 2 spots a day. So you're running around 40 scenes a day.
And a small crew just to keep it lean and mean and to stay.
Well, not
nimble?
necessarily. We had 3 cameras. We had a drone, we had a B camera, we had an A camera. So I was one of the cameras, and then there was another cameraman, and the drone was sort of, while we're setting up the other stuff, we would go, and leapfrog was the crucial benefit to this, because we could, partition off a camera crew to go set up the next thing while we're finishing up. Yes. And we had a Ronin that wasn't working. So we had to use a Steadicam. Luckily, one of the camera operators was a Steadicam operator, had brought his rig. So that was great. And so we, the second day I said, don't take that Ronin out because it's not working. And of course it came out. I said, what are you doing? It didn't work. We're in St. Louis. And this is when gimbals were not quite what they are now.
They hadn't taken over. Luckily, that guy dusted off his Steadicam and didn't sell it at the garage sale.
Correct. Yeah.
Like they would now with a Ronin or a little handheld gimbal.
Yeah, exactly. And so we forged ahead. I'm pretty good handheld, but I'm not as good as a gimbal. So we literally just kept on track as much as we could. I was nervous about the Steadicam or the Ronin, but we literally had to just keep moving. And, because we had, limited time. We had 3 days, and we had to shoot all these commercials and pick up shots, and we had to do, little bits and pieces that we just had to move with.
So sorry to interrupt. The 2-minute film on your website is, and you can pass on any question, it was part of the deliverables, part of the brief to make a longer film, or Scott goes, all these faces and these machines and the clean film, I'm going to make a 2-minute film for my portfolio.
It was out the gate. It was a 2-minute film, and out of that film,
that was the assignment.
Yeah, the assignment was that, but it was also the 4 commercials as well. So we had we're shooting all these things, and it's going to cut together as a short brand film, but we also want to do broadcast spots as well. So it just sort of dovetailed and overlapped, and the agency did do a cut, and I felt like I wanted to do more with people and the interaction, so I did my own director's cut.
Always.
I know.
They put too much tractor porn in it, right? They had levers and wheels, and
it was a bit wordy, a lot of voiceover. And I wanted to do something with that music track that was more about, working the land and being a part of it rather than, financing and get your deal now. I wanted to create something that was, intuitive to what a farmer would expect. They're out there working the land, or somebody deciding they wanted to plant a bunch of trees and what that takes. And you've got a limited amount of time, and the love for the land. That was part of my treatment too, was like, what is it that makes people want to work with their hands out in the field? And of course, the agency was working with this great agency out of South Dakota called Paulson. And I loved working with them. Yeah, Paulson. Yeah, Paulson Agricultural Marketing. I think they're out of South Dakota.
How did they find you? From the trucks?
Well, they knew John Brooks, the producer.
They knew John Brooks.
Yeah.
Helen, get John Brooks on the show. We have to talk to John Brooks, because you've dropped his name twice. He must be a swell fella.
He is. He's a great guy. Yeah.
John, you have open invite on the show.
Yeah, he'd be great for you guys. I'll hook you guys up.
Please.
Hey everybody, my name is Kat Raphael, and I am a commercial director that specializes in kids commercials and working with kids. I've been working in the industry for 29 years now, but I'm relatively new to directing. There's a lot of stuff that you can second guess yourself or not maybe think you know as well when you're first starting out. And when that was the case, one of the things that I would do and use as a resource is Jordan Brady's podcast, Respect the Process. And I would go on there and I would listen to stories about treatments or how to pull things together, or really what the right way to do things was and how to get kind of free advice. And then it's a whole different level when you decide to go to the boot camp, right? So it doesn't just start in the boot camp when you're in the room with the other 9 filmmakers and Jordan is basically giving you all of his tips and tricks and things that's worked for the last however many years he's been doing this. Where it really starts is when you get that phone call from him 2 weeks or a week beforehand, and he says, tell me about what you want. Tell me about what your goals are. Tell me about where you see your career going. And you have someone who you can really talk to and who can be a mentor and who can be an ally and who can cheer for you. And he does. He truly, truly, truly does. So you lay all that out for him, you show up, you get the chance to meet him in person, you get the chance to meet and work with all these other filmmakers, and you leave knowing that if you have questions, or if you need to brainstorm, or if you're having and hawing in something about something and you just don't know, you can shoot him an email. I have had the opportunity to talk to Jordan a couple of times since the boot camp itself, and he is so willing to give you his time and his energy, because really, truly, it is with the most sincerity that he is cheering you on and he wants to see you succeed. And I believe that I am not a special case in that. Although I'm special, I am not a special case in that. That I know, because he is so giving of himself. And it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to grow and to learn and to get to know yourself better as a director and to get to be inspired by other people. Because sometimes truly all it takes is for someone to say, hey, you know what? You're doing great and I believe in you. And that is something that Jordan Brady will do for you, because he does.
We've gone from Prince, Diamond, and Pearls to NASCAR, which is the biggest mutation. Then we're down in NASCAR. Kind of makes sense to do some trucks, right?
Yeah.
And then from trucks to tractors, that's a no-brainer. It's almost like you're
just a little slower. That's about it.
Yeah, it's slower. But I mean, as a director, though, you're like, I got this one. This is like, I'm sandbagging it.
Where's the reflections? Where's the sun? That's, you always want to do cinematic approaches to everything, timing your day, because you have the same amount of day light, and you can't really take the time off like the old days. In the old car commercial days, they used to take 3 or 4 hours out of the middle of the day and not shoot.
Yeah, it was too ugly.
Yeah, it was a waste of time.
You're doing
they'd work a deal,
the console or something.
Yeah, that's what we do. We still do that. Still the inserts, the interiors are all midday.
Now, how do you get to Pepsi and Lowe's?
Well, I was, at the time back in the late 2010, 2012, I was kind of getting pigeonholed into doing cars. And I felt
Not
I
a
love
bad
cars.
place to be, Scott.
It's not a bad place to be, but I also felt like, I had more to offer and I wanted to do more things, and I didn't turn anything down.
You had the itch.
But yeah, I had an itch, and I was out in LA, and a lot of the LA creative work was dealing with Coors Light, and Budweiser was cars, but then you get Pepsi. Sometimes I believe that the work picks you. So I had an opportunity to work with NBC Universal, who had the Pepsi account for, I think it was Saturday Night Live, had a deal going on, and they wanted to create this commercial. And I was connected because, this networking is so important for everyone in this business. The agency, the producer I worked with for doing some narrative work, I did a couple of short films, I did a couple of pilots. His name is Kenny Yackel. He's a great screenwriter. His wife is a producer, and she worked with NBC years ago, and she had heard that they're looking for a director to do a sort of fun, action-packed commercial for Pepsi. I got a call, or I reached out, and I said, I might be able to help you. I sent my reel. They liked it, and I pitched what I could bring to them, and they said, okay. But it was the connection. It was the networking. Yeah, it was the networking. But you still, even with the networking, you still have to have it on the reel. So they saw something in my Prince work. They saw something in my previous work with Coors Light. And, it was, that Pepsi spot was on the 7th floor downtown LA with 50 extras and a 12-hour day. We had 13 scenes to do, and 2 of the elevators out of the 3 were broken. So
you're down to 8 hours of shooting.
Yeah, basically, yeah. You had to get up to the 7th floor where it was an open space. That was the only open space that they had some deal with. I wasn't a part of the location. But I said, okay, this will work, but we have an issue. We have to get all this stuff up and all these people up. And we have to literally be from scene to scene every 30 minutes in order to make this day. And I had 1 camera. And of course, I didn't even get the camera up. We were already behind schedule right out of the gate. We're like an hour behind because the camera couldn't get up the elevators because we didn't know the elevators were not working that morning.
Someone humped it up the stairs?
No, it was just, cases and people and, all these extras, elevators, just you got to share one elevator. And so that was more of a production dropping the ball than anything else. I was like, no one knew this until we get there. And so it's on my shoulders. So I got to start making up time.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever done a job where you hired a cinematographer?
Yes, I have. I did a Minnesota Lottery commercial. I worked with a DP, Guy Ferner. I'm not sure where he is now, but we did a line dance with, about 100 extras and line dancing, country music, Powerball.
Yep.
It was a great experience.
What was the reasoning behind not shooting it yourself?
It's just a lot of work to do. So if you can hand off the DP work, and this was a lot of show lighting. So, they had lights in location, but we also wanted to create a music video feel to it. And my purpose was to direct the shooting. So we had 3 cameras. I was an operator. We had a crane. And I think we had another camera. It was a while ago, but it was to give a different look and a style to the work that for my reel too. It was kind of a combination. And it was, the producer was like, let's do this because we could give a different look, and then it can free you up to really work with the choreography and the talent and the little bits and pieces that need the attention it needs. So I'm actually working on stepping away from the DP work because it's, I'm as a director and I also do writing too. Mm-hmm. That knowledge comes in handy in no matter where you're at. So if you're on the set as a DP and you know what it's going to take to turn around and decide to change things, that's going to take some time and it's going to take some people. So if you understand what it takes to get 20K up on scaffolding and, or use this gear or use that gear and what it takes to move around. You can talk to a DP in terminology that they understand,
Sure.
but you also can keep in mind the budget and your efficiency as well. So, knowing what you can do with one light as opposed to what you can do with 10, it's all relative, and each shot is very specific, and it can go 100 different ways. So if you can work with the director of photography that is a collaborative nature, so then you can actually create something that's unique and different. They bring their thing to the table, I bring my thing to the table, and we create something that's great. And I've done a couple of things for NASCAR and PlayStation where we worked with DPs too. So I'm not opposed to it. It's just they like the work that I've gotten. They've liked my DP style as well, and they afford you a gaffer and a great AD. And in my terms, when I come to a project where I'm also the DP, I will do a lot of prep. I'll do floor plans of where I want the lights to go.
Sure.
What kind of the lights I want it to go. Where's the track, so that I can hand this off and we can do our pre-production.
Do you ever use any new digital tools like scan the room or build a LiDAR rendering or?
Not yet. We've, it's been one of those things where it's on the list, right? And the LiDAR is definitely something that is going to be a great tool when I use it, because when you do your floor plans, you lay it out. But with this, you can really just pick your angles and actually do it from a first person perspective, and then dialing in your lenses and your camera moves. It's all pre-production anyway, so it's when you can use the actual environment, that'd be great. I mean, it's like same thing with SunPath.
I've done it twice.
SunPath. Yeah. That's
twice
great.
Once with the LiDAR, where a friend, I was in LA and another director went in Austin and scanned the house for me, and we zoomed and he walked me through it. And that was beneficial, just the walkthrough.
Awesome.
Right?
Awesome. Yeah.
And then the Property Brothers on the roof, the production designer built like an Unreal Engine version of the set to scale in the space. It was on a blue screen stage.
Yeah.
Should have been green, but the blue curtain was 360 around the thing, and that ended up working great. But
so did you use Unreal for that, or do you use?
No, we used plates, like stock photo plates, because it was so out of focus, and you could reposition them and Photoshop things and whatnot. Unreal would have worked. It wasn't on an LED wall. Okay. And I think that would have slowed it down, quite honestly. Okay. But what was funny is the production designer actually did a hypothetical edit off of my shooting board. He replicated the shooting boards with a 2-shot and the singles and the cut, and it was a pretty good edit. But I had built during prep, and I think I included pictures in my treatment, like a little model of the roof to scale, because it had to have solar panels on it. So I made cardboard panels and a cardboard roof set.
Yeah, when you think about it.
And it was the same exact thing. One looked like a 4th grader did it, which was me with scissors and glue and cardboard, and the other looked computer. But at the end of the day, both tools got us to the same place. So I'm often telling people it's on a job-by-job basis. What is the end goal, and what tool in that moment for that project works?
Well, it's very tactile. I respect that, because I would probably have done the same thing. It's like, okay, yeah, you may have a virtual set, but it's like, okay, now you're dealing with actors that are got to probably walk around these things. And then how big are we going to make these? I mean, are they going to be too small? Are they going to read on camera? Or do I need to double them up, because behind the actor, behind the talent, you have to see them, or they have to, be in a certain position, the blocking where you put the camera. I mean, you have to have those answers in play.
I would think, and I talked about this with Morgan and Nick are directors, and you can learn about them at truegent.tv. Husband-wife directing team, and Nick actually went and did the scan for me and walked me through just as a friend. And I could see location scouts, if the market would bear the cost of this. Like, instead of just seeing location pictures, if you could walk me through, and I'm sure that real estate agents do this, right? They scan the home. That's what I want to see on a location scout, because I want to know, is there room to put the magic movie lights?
Yeah.
And we can dress the background however we want.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And it makes total sense. And, I'm very much, I like to go on location. There's something about that. It brings something to the table rather than having to build something or be in a virtual environment. I did a music video recently where we used a 2D LED wall. And it was amazing because we did, it's all graphic, and, we then had show lights. It brought me back to the Prince days where we had the computerized lighting systems in the ceiling, choreographed and marked with our background. And it was a relief to just have that. But it's like, we could not build that for this budget. I mean, it was just, it was a perfect tool for the right thing. And, it still wasn't a cheap thing. It was the most expensive thing. It's still, $10,000 to rent that stage, but it's, it was quick. We did all that dancing and all that stuff in probably 2 hours, 3 hours. We did all this other stuff in the video. It was just, there's so many things. And I think you brought up something that was interesting. You can actually slow yourself down with too much stuff to deal with.
Busy work.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like a second camera. I was on a Prince shoot for Mavis Staples, and I was brought in as a B camera operator in LA. And the DP and the director were doing their thing. And I literally did not shoot one frame. The camera was all set up, ready to go. But the director has to utilize the tools that are in front of them. Mm-hmm. And so when I wasn't working, I was ready, and, Prince wanted me there for Mavis, but I wasn't called to shoot a single frame. At first, I was a little upset, but I was like, well, I'm still getting paid, but it's like, it's not my responsibility. The director is under serving the clients. You can even set up a camera next to the other camera and do the same exact thing with a different lens and doing something different. At least do that. But that was a fault of the director on that particular project. Not my fault. So it probably, putting myself in that situation, it was probably one too many tools for that particular director, or she didn't like me. I don't know.
Or a combination of both.
Yeah. Right. I was very territorial in this business for sure.
I was going to say, I lost a job recently that was surprising, and I was just ranting about it before an episode last night that I was posted, in that it takes place around a swimming pool, and casually the ECD had mentioned, like, 2 cameras capturing the comedy, and I'm like, and the pool's got to look attainable. Okay, so we know the pool isn't going to be that big, which means the backyard probably isn't going to be that big. Maybe we can, the second camera is going to be across the pool. That just doesn't make sense. It's going to take more time to light for a second camera, or it's going to compromise the look of the first one. Mm-hmm. And the amount of material that, especially with comedy, that people want to do multiple spots in a day, and I think I'm very fast. I just think it's faster with one camera. Mm-hmm. I rarely say, oh, you can just punch in. I would rather have a different focal length. Comedically, I think viewers subconsciously realize a more premium look when you change the lens versus cut in on the same shot.
Yeah. Yeah, right? or reposition and post. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Same
to
thing.
repo and blow up a little bit, but to cut from one to the other as if there were 2 cameras, I rarely, if not never, pitch that as an idea. But changing the lens on one camera to me seemed faster especially with a spokesperson, because they can't turn to the other camera. They can't play them both, because now where are you going to edit?
Yeah.
Like you're not. committed.
Yeah, and you see that in some of these interviews. It's kind of a trend where you almost have to be completely 90 degrees in order to really pay off the fact that you got a second camera.
Yeah.
And it becomes almost trendy where it's like intercutting between two cameras where there's a second camera. Well, is it jarring? Is it going to
I think it's jarring.
Yeah.
I don't even like it in documentaries because although it's very useful in documentaries, and that's different because it's a real person. I think it's I think it's not a good idea. I don't like that side angle. I would rather see what you described, to a close-up. And somebody just showed me, maybe it was my son Ben, who was a talented cinematographer in his own right and director, like almost like using a teleprompter setup for a second camera with a tighter lens, so that the talent or interviewee is always looking right in the same lens.
Yeah.
Because if you stack two cameras or put one off to the side, the eye line is a little off when you go to the other camera.
Exactly. And so and I think that's kind of what they do in like live news, is that when, they're interviewing people, obviously what we're doing here, you can tell, like right now I'm looking at me, but then I know my camera's up there. So if you have a screen and then the camera is behind the screen, that makes total sense that you are in the moment with what you're doing with your interview.
Like the Interatron.
I'm not familiar.
Oh, who's the greatest documentary filmmaker that does commercials? Errol Morris.
Oh yeah, okay.
He invented I think it's called the Interatron. Maybe it's the Interviewatron, something like that. Where
so he had a camera,
and mirrors.
Mirror.
He can be in another room, but the subject is looking at him reflected.
That's the first time I've heard that term.
Yeah, Google that. And I'm sure a listener will correct me, but I've seen it in a lot of behind the scenes, and it seems genius. Didn't he do a documentary on McNamara? The Fog of War, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Might have been another one where they used it. So that he gets intimate because the subject is talking directly to his eyes, but they're simultaneously, they're looking into the camera. Scott, I got to wrap up here, buddy. This has been a great chat, learning about you and this meandering voyage that now your career makes so much sense. It's so logical.
Well, thank you. I sometimes think it's illogical.
Prince to Pickups could be, Helen, write that down. That could be a good name for the episode. From Prince to Pickups with Scott McCullough. Do you say McCullough? Am I saying your name right?
You are saying it correctly.
McCullough.
Yeah.
Is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about, or questions you thought I would ask?
It's a journey. It's like I'm shifting, like you mentioned about working with DPs. That would be exciting for me because I can learn from them as well. So I've been afforded the chance to just light and shoot, and it sometimes get chaotic and crazy because things happen, right? So not only the directing, but you got to, worry about the lighting and where's the sun. But the idea of stepping back from that is so intriguing, and to be able to work with a great cinematographer would just be like a relief. It's like when I was working with Prince and I started doing commercials, I was surprised that I actually had a week or 2 weeks of prep where you could do wardrobe, do locations, you could check things out, you can plan it, adjusting before you get there. But with Prince, it's like you have to go now, and then you have to make it look good, and you have to read
He's not doing a fitting with you.
No. In fact, he shows up, and he could make that wardrobe work. It's crazy. I told him one time, he just showed up, and I don't know, his wardrobe is different all the time, and he just showed up with a lapel, and bare chested, but just a lapel. And I was like looking at him, he was in a good mood, so you can kind of gauge what you can say and what you shouldn't say. And I said, I don't know where I said, only you could make that look great. He smiled and walked away.
Yeah, it sounds like only Prince or Yogi Bear, who wore a collar and a tie. Right? Those are the only people I could think of.
Right. And it's just, he knows his brand. And so it's like, as a director, you have to understand the world. And so I'm moving into doing TV and film. I love commercials. I'll always do them. I'm up for some things, but it's like, it's a weird time right now. So patience is important. And, just understanding where the next phase is going to be. What is the next tools? And you've hit it on the head. It's like working with LiDAR and working with photogrammetry and understanding digital effects, what you can do. Don't worry about that window. We'll replace that. And creative directors are sometimes, up to their head in 6 other projects. So sometimes you have to keep them focused too.
Right. It's funny. There's a board I saw recently that I wanted to do practically with augmented simple effects, almost like After Effects level 2D augmentation of a smile, a wink, an eyebrow raise. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to pitch AI. In my mind, I'm like, a year from now, it'll be an AI hybrid, live action hybrid result.
I kind of think I think I'm on the same page as you. I kind of think it's almost like an avatar hybrid with AI, where you have real performers, but they blink at the wrong time. Not even
with dots on their face.
No, you can match it. Yeah,
you can match it. You can map their face. You're still working with a live actor. I still, I do a lot of mostly comedy dialogue where there's a little bit of improv. So I still want that. But boy, if I could make the person's, hair be more like a Medusa head of snakes or something, I think that's going to be more off the shelf. Now, I'm not going to do it as a director. I'm hoping that the special effects team and the post house, they're going to adopt the tools and be the experts in those tools. Yeah. So the process will be the same. The tool will be different, and embracing them and learning, or just being sort of being able to speak in the terms of the day.
Yeah. And be aware of those little tricks that can help the situation. It's go ahead.
Well, the last question, everyone, I don't know if you've heard the show, it's called Respect the Process.
Yes.
You've been on it for an hour plus now. We end the show with our esteemed guest, that's you, answering what that means to them. What does respect the process mean to you, Scott?
Well, it kind of has to find its own energy in life. I always think that every project starts with an idea or a bunch of ideas together. And then when it comes time to actually produce it, you kind of have to let that energy or that idea find its own life, find its own way, whether it be improv or, discovering is a better way to say a line or a better way to get to the point. And you got to get out of its way. I think that's what, sometimes technology can be too much. It's there, but, blocking, a simple example, like you may overblock. Sometimes an actor just wants to do his thing. And as a filmmaker, you have to say, okay, let's respect that process because that's what we're shooting. And we have to just get out of the way of the process. So respecting it is also letting it become its own thing.
That's a great answer.
That answers.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I'm going to put links to your website with the show, and you come back anytime and keep us posted.
Thank you.
Good luck, and thanks again for being on the show.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here. It's really fun and talking about work.
I'll talk to you later, man. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Commercial Directing Film School's mission is to help filmmakers direct commercials professionally. With online courses and in-person boot camps, we demystify the process to get you to the next level, all taught by your accessible mentor, filmmaker Jordan Brady.
True Gentleman Industries. We make commercials.